Hello and welcome. This is the Bits vs. Bytes podcast. I'm your host, Amar Grigic, and today with me is David Allen. He is the author of Getting Things Done and, of course, the methodology behind that. So, David, welcome.
I'm delighted to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
No problem. It's an honor to have you on. Could you, for starters, could you tell a little bit about your background and also how you got to write Getting Things Done?
Sure. Well, if we go back many, many years, I started my own small little consulting practice after lots of different careers that I had. And I, was always looking for what are some good models to use if I run across somebody that I was consulting with in the business world and in my network, that it wasn't clear how to help them, but they know they needed help. It'd be nice if I had something I could pull out of my back pocket as a tool to use to help sort of improve whatever their condition was and whatever their issue was. Combine that with my background in meditation and martial arts and other things that gave me my own sort of attraction to clear space. How nice it was to have a clear, empty head so you could focus and be present on whatever you were doing. So as my life got more complex, I was interested in discovering models that I could use for myself to keep myself straight and clear, given the more complex world that I was beginning to create for myself. So I discovered piece by piece little bits of, what later on became sort of the essence of this methodology known now as GTD, or shorthand for getting things done. But that was back in the early 1980s. And I had two or three mentors that taught me various pieces of this, and I'd begun to cobble it together just for myself. But then whatever I was discovering for myself that helped me stay clear and focused and stable, and gave me more room to focus on the meaningful stuff in my life, turned around and shared those techniques with my clients, and it turned out it produced exactly the same results, no exception. People implement this methodology, or even parts of it, it's going to create more of a sense of control and focus and stability and clarity.
Yeah.
So I said, well, that's pretty cool. And then a guy, head of human resources in a big corporation, saw what I was doing. And he said, gee, David, we need that kind of result in our whole culture. Can you design something like a training or a training methodology that we could, do seminars and so forth instead of just reaching people one-on-one, which is what I was doing. And so I designed a personal productivity training program. We did a pilot of that program. It was a 2-day personal productivity, mostly for supervisors, managers, executives. And we did a pilot program for 1,000 of those folks over a year's period of time, and it really worked. It was one of the most successful programs they had ever implemented. So I went, wow, who knew? I found myself suddenly thrust into the corporate training world with something that I was doing. Now, I have to tell you, quite frankly, I've never had any formal or traditional education in psychology, business, or time management. This was all just from street. Just learning by doing and seeing what was going on and, stuff that really worked for me. And so then I wound up over the next few years being thrust into just training hundreds of thousands of people, actually, in major corporations and small businesses and entrepreneurs and whatever. I was doing both public seminars as well as a lot of in-house seminars inside of companies. And my consulting really turned more into executive coaching, where once I was in a company, some of the key people said, gee, I'd like to implement that personally. Can you help me out one-on-one? And so, I spent literally thousands of hours one-on-one with some of the smartest and brightest and busiest people you'd ever meet, actually implementing this methodology and refining it. And then at some point after 25 years of this, it took me that long to sort of figure out, what I discovered, and that nobody else seemed to have come up with it, and that it was bulletproof.
Yeah.
So I got some really good coaching that the best thing to do at this point in my life was to write a book. So that's when the first edition of Getting Things Done, it took me 4 years to really get it out the way I wanted it. And it showed up in 2001. But that was, that wasn't just sort of a fly by night or off the cuff thing. That was really a compilation of 25 years of my, fairly deep experience in terms of implementing this methodology with every kind of person you can imagine at every level you can imagine. So that's why I had the trust. I'm not a ta-da kind of person. I'm not going to just write something and hope it works. I was not going to put this in print because it really represented, at least up to that time, my life's work. And it's
Yeah.
kind of daunting. You mentioned before we started, you just read the new edition, but that, anybody picks that up. If you're not familiar with it at all, it might seem a bit daunting because I put in there a whole lot of stuff,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
really the whole game.
Yeah, the interesting part to me was I've read the first edition as well, but then over the last week I was looking at the second one, and I was like, I forgot how many how detailed it is in a sense of a kind of, it's kind of a manual to do this whole methodology,
Yeah,
and that's you mentioned that in your book as well, where you said, yeah, while I was rewriting this, I was not going to rewrite that because I really wanted the people to know what it actually is, right?
yeah.
And that's so interesting to me. So what I wanted to ask you is, you've had these all these kinds of different careers, as you mentioned. Did that also help in creating this whole methodology? Was it kind of the instigator where you saw, okay, I've seen all these kind of different areas and different things that I've done in my life, and it can be, you can create something that works for all of them. Is that also some inspiration for that?
Well, yeah, for sure. Because one of the things I discovered these techniques both for myself and then with my clients. It also worked for their kids. It worked for their spouse. It worked for anybody. Anybody who's got a busy life that wanted to sort of surf more on top of it and have more clarity and be able to truly get things done a bit easier than they were doing before. It's really not about time. You can't manage time. Time just is. Uh, but what you do is you manage your own focus during the time that you have. And I just, this became uh, pretty much early on, pretty obvious to me. This worked for anybody. The
Mm.
first edition that I wrote was really targeted for the fast track professional, because they were the first people. They were first of all, the hungriest for this. They were the first group of people as a sort of as a sort of defined group of people that were most um, aware of the new need to surf on top of the tsunami of email and all the just stuff that was showing up in the 90s, the mid to the late 90s. And they were also the people interested in their companies in paying for this and investing in stuff that was going to help people be able to get rid of their stress and be more productive. So that was the world that I wound up spending a whole lot of my time in. But even when I wrote the first edition, a lot of my examples and so forth were targeted for that group. Even then, I knew this worked for the clergy. It worked for physicians. It worked for anybody. And startups. It worked for entry level people. It worked for CEOs. Worked for
Yeah.
anybody. And so that early on, that was obvious to me. This was universal. And
Very cool.
so
Yeah.
that certainly provided an undercurrent of motivation that this was good stuff.
Yeah. So, for the people that haven't read your books, could you explain what GTD is for you? So, from your perspective.
Sure. Mostly, it's a set of best practices that allow me to create more space and room in my head to focus on what I want to focus on and to be present with whatever I'm doing. Now, I couldn't have told you that, back in 1982 or 83 when I began to sort of put all this together. But that's ultimately the end result of it. And it's really, when I say best practices, they're behaviors and techniques to apply that you're not born doing, but they're not hard to do. Actually, everybody listening to this right now actually does some version of all of these techniques. You write stuff down that's on your mind, you decide next actions, that you need to take about things you need to do. You try to keep track of the outcomes and projects that you're committed to finish. You need to step back and kind of have a bigger look at your world, so you don't stay down in the weeds all the time. So you kind of have a sense of priorities and focus, and you engage, you do stuff, that
Mm.
you need to do that most yanks your chain and that you have attention on.
Yeah.
So those are really the key elements of this. It's just very few people are doing what I just said consistently, currently, all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of
That's
most people do it when the pressure forces them to about
exactly.
any specific thing, but they haven't built in, a habitual methodology to
Yeah.
keep clear all the time.
Yeah, that's been my problem from a personal standpoint. I mean, it wasn't a big problem kind of in the beginning of my career, because then you don't have that much on your plate at any time. But as you progress, you kind of see that keeping everything in your mind, which was what I was doing. I did have a calendar, of course, but that was pretty much it. And as you progress, you kind of you kind of see that just doing that isn't, you're forgetting things. You're forgetting things all the time. Like, oh, I know I said this and this. I would do this and this, and I didn't do it. And that bugs people a lot, and bugs me as well. Where I see, like, okay, I forgot this thing that I really wanted to help somebody out with, for example, or whatever.
Yeah.
And that,
Well, that's not only, forgetting, key things you
yeah,
want to remember, but it's also not having the space to be doing constantly creative thinking,
exactly, yeah,
about new stuff and interesting things you want to be thinking about.
yeah. So what I did along the way was, for example, if I look at my email, I use the kind of inbox zero thing, which may or may not be good. It works for me because I'm like, okay, everything that's in my inbox, I know that I need to do something with it. And usually now it's also been like, I'm training myself more to write things down, like real tasks and stuff like that, to know that these are things that I need to do at any given point in the week, for example. I don't plan ahead that much, because if I plan ahead like a month or 2 months later, it's hard to keep track of that for some reason. But there is something, I think, in GTD where you also mentioned that, right? Where you can plan for the things that are maybe a month out or 2 months out or whatever.
Well, you might need to do that if you need to do that to get something off your mind.
Sure. Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
whole reason for any of this stuff, I'm not a naturally organized guy. I kind of like cool gear, but that's not, that's kind of fun to play with, if you got a good organizer and good apps and so forth that kind of help you with all that. But I'm not naturally organized. I naturally hate to waste my time and energy on anything. I
Mm.
hate to keep thinking about things that I'm not doing anything about.
Yeah.
I really love that sort of clear space idea. So the idea of being able to do as much as I need to do to get something off my mind. So if, for instance, you've got kids that you're going to send off to college in 3 years and you haven't yet planned for how you're going to pay for it and what they need to do, you probably better set some sort of a goal over the next year or two. Things you'd say, hey, if that's going to happen, here's the 2 or 3 or 4 things I need to put into place. And you might need to come up with those in order to get kids in college off your mind. So it's not about saying don't plan. I'm just saying plan only as much as you need to have
Yeah.
your head clear, and then be ready to change those plans. Believe me, as, as life is going to change, you know,
Yeah.
and it's going to change. That's there's nothing new in the world except how frequently things are new.
Yeah, and then the interesting thing is that sometimes I also have that. I think everybody has that feeling, like at like I don't know, 11 p.m. in the evening, and you're like, oh, I need to still do this, or I still need to do this, or whatever, and that kind of feeling comes over you. And what I usually do is just write it down, and it helps.
Sure.
But it's the tricky part here is that I think, and you mentioned that in the book as well, is to actually capture all those things that are going on. Uh,
Well, the
and
problem is if you only have part of it, you don't trust any of it.
yeah, exactly.
You feel better for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
But if you've got half the stuff out of your head and half the stuff in your head, you don't trust your head and you don't trust your system, because
yeah,
you
exactly.
don't trust either one is complete.
Mm,
So, kind of the good and bad news is there's really salvation at the light at the end of this tunnel is to get the totality of all of your commitments clarified and current and externalized in some trusted external brain, so that your head is relieved of the pressure of remembering and reminding any of that. And then your head is used for what it's good for, which is using your intuitive intelligence to scan the whole gestalt of all of that and decide those are the errands to run today. That's the stuff I want to talk to my life partner about. Time to take a nap. Let me put all of that other stuff to rest.
Yeah.
That's a power nap. You take a nap to avoid it, they're not going to sleep as well.
Yeah, exactly. And to get to how do you organize that for yourself? Because I think that's maybe interesting insight into how you actually implement it for yourself. So you probably do it exactly the same way as you written it down. But could you tell a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, one way to describe it is I recognize the 5 stages we go through to get any situation more under control and focused. That's the 5 steps of capture, clarify, organize, reflect, and engage. Capture is the first step. That is, I need to grab something. As you see, you sit down to meditate or you sit down watching TV and suddenly go, oh God, I need to make sure that whatever that is. So the first thing to do is to capture it. That is not just captured in your head. Your head's a crappy office. It wasn't designed to remember or remind. As a matter of fact, if you're trying to keep track of more than 4 things in your head, you'll lose. That is, you won't be optimal in terms of your focus, and you'll be driven by latest and loudest. So getting stuff out of your head into some sort of trusted temporary bucket, an in basket, or write it down on a list or put it somewhere. In other words, get it out of your head. So that's step 1. And absolutely, I do that. I've done that for 35 years.
Mm.
And it's ubiquitous. I carry around a little pocket note taker wallet. I've got a physical in basket. Mostly it's low tech. I've just got pen and paper, the fastest ways to capture stuff, because that's not my permanent system. That's a placeholder for stuff until I can go through steps 2 and 3. Step 2 is once I've captured the stuff, I've written the note down, I've thrown the stuff into my in tray or whatever, then I need to pick it up and decide what specifically does that mean to me? Is it something I'm committed to move on or not? We get a lot of things we're not committed to move on. 3 things, actually. 1 is trash. I don't need it, or now that I've seen it, I don't need it. The other is reference material. You look at it and you go, nothing to do on that, but I want to keep it in case I need to refer to it later on. The third thing is you look at it and say, that's something the Dutch orchestra is doing, at the Concertgebouw, in 2 months. I'm not sure if I can do it then, but I might want to rethink that in a month or so, see if we want to get tickets then. That's something that, like what we call on hold or incubate. So there are a lot of things that come into our world that we either create, look at, think about, that then when you really think about it, you go, no action on that now.
Yeah.
But then there are a lot of things that show up that fall on the other side called, yes, there is stuff I need to do about it. We need cat food. I need to replace my printer. I need to hire a vice president of marketing. We need to look into whether or not we want to merge with this other company, yada, yada, all that stuff. So once you've captured those thoughts, then little or big or personal, professional, doesn't matter, but get them all. Each one you need to then look at. And the ones that you say, yes, there is something I need to do about cat food or hiring a vice president, then you need to clarify 2 things. One is, what's the next action on these? What's the next step? If you had nothing else to do but handle cat food, what would that be?
Yeah.
If you had nothing else to do but hire the vice president, what would that be? Where would you go right now? What would you do? So that gets a very discrete decision about what, if you had nothing else to do in your life, what physical, visible activity would move the needle on this toward closure. So the next action thinking and decision is a very critical one to do in step 2, which is clarifying those things you've captured that are actionable. And the second question you need to clarify is, if one action won't finish this, what's the end result? Now, probably getting cat food is not, you don't need to have a project about that, I would assume.
Yeah.
Unless you don't have a cat yet,
That would be
then you've got a project. But hire the vice president, sure, that's going to be a project. So you need to then capture that as some outcome you're also committed to do. So the clarify step is, hey, is it actionable? Yes or no. If it's no, it's trash, or it's reference material, or it's on hold. If it is actionable, what's the very next action? And if one action won't finish it, what's the outcome I'm committed to complete? So that's the clarify step. Really, really critical step. Most people haven't trained themselves to do that thinking on the front end. Step 3 is then, okay, if you can't finish whatever it is you need to keep track of, or you don't want to just put your reference material in some amorphous pile, you then need to organize these things based upon what you just decided. Trash goes where trash goes, reference material goes where you're keeping reference material. On hold goes onto some sort of a on hold or someday maybe, or into a trigger for later review. And then actionable things, your next actions need to go somewhere on some sort of a list. Now, of course, in between all this, there's the 2-minute rule. If you decide the next action you can finish in less than 2 minutes, you don't need to organize it. You just need to do it, because it
Yeah.
would take you longer to organize it and look at it again than to finish it while it's in your face. So that's a neat little kind of sidebar, trick that has a lot of executives say that's worth the whole price of admission. Just that they didn't have that habit already. So a lot of things I decide I don't organize. I just do them right when I see them.
Yeah.
And then, if you can't do that, then you say, am I the right person to do this? So if there's somebody else that really ought to do that action instead of you, you need to delegate it. That's a delegatable item. And if it's something that you can't do in 2 minutes, you can't hand it off to somebody else, then you need to keep track of it until you can get time to do it, appropriately. And that's the third, thing you might do with an action, is put it on a list.
Yeah.
Here's an errand I need to run. Here's a call I need to make. Here's a conversation I need to have with my partner. Here's something I need to draft on my computer. And those things, for me, just go on lists that just show up that way. For God, for errands, I look at my errands list. I
Yeah.
need to sort of talk to my wife about business of life stuff and things we haven't handled already. I'll look at my list for her. So those just go on list, as well as all my projects also go on a list. So I can take a look at those very easily. So that's the step 3, is organize. Once I decided what these things are, they just go in the appropriate category. And then step 4 is to make sure I'm looking at those things, review and reflect on the contents. When going out for errands, I better look at my errands list. Otherwise I get back and I go, oh,
I
forgot to
forgot
pick
it.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the review and reflect process, and that can happen at multiple tiers. You could be reviewing your life purpose. You could be reviewing your strategic plan. You could be reviewing just your all the projects you have, in play, in motion out there. So there are several different tiers of things you need to review so you feel comfortable. And step 5 is then you engage. Wherever you put your focus, your attention, or your activity, now is based upon if you've done the first 4 steps of capturing, clarifying, organizing, and reflecting, then you make a decision about taking a nap or sitting down and rewriting your business plan or whatever. That's made from a trusted choice, not I hope this is the right thing to do choice.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, what's interesting to me is that when I think about it, there's a lot of similarities with how, for example, I work with a team for software development as well, where when we start a big project, for example, a new application, and we need to build a first version, what we usually do is actually we sit down and we kind of start mapping stuff, right? Where we just put things on post-its and put them up on a board, and we're like, okay, you use the user stories thing where you say, okay, a user needs to be able to do log in, or a user needs to be doing this or that, and that's interesting because there is also some kind of a form of capturing there, where you're capturing everything that a user should be able to do within the system later on, and then starting to work from top. So you just say, okay, we need to have the sign up function. Okay, so what do you as a user need to fill in during the sign up? You're going from a bigger part to a smaller part and a smaller part, and then you start to, of course, plan it later on. But that's interesting that there's some similarities between those two, where you also review, especially if you do the kind of Scrum thing, where you review your sprint every 2 weeks, for example. So it's interesting that there is some similarities between those two. But what I was also thinking about is, when I was reading the book, you had one passage in there that said that a lot of people think that getting things done also means getting more done. So having more things that you're actually going to do. Could you speak a little bit about what you think about that? Because that's as you said in the book as well. It's kind of the kicker. You called it getting things done, and then people are thinking like, okay, we need to get more done after that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, actually, it turns out I'm going to be quite a common syndrome for people who really buy into the getting things done methodology. The
Yeah,
first year or two, they get so excited because they can get more done. And they love the fact that they can throw new things in their in basket and stuff is cranking out there, because a lot of these techniques lower the barrier of entry for you to actually engage and produce. So it does make it easier to get more done. And so if you're enthused about getting more done, it's going to help you in spades do that. And then at a certain point, they go, well, wait a minute, I'm starting to burn out because I'm getting so much done.
I'm
I'm
getting
being,
too much done.
I'm getting so creative. There's so many things. Wait a minute, I'm not sure this is what it's really all about. And it's really not. I mean, it is in a way, if that's the time and space in your life and your situation where you do need to be able to get more done with less effort. But to a large degree, it's about just being present with whatever you're doing. And a lot of people speed up by slowing down. There's a lot of work coming out now, and probably 10 books a week are written about, hey, you need to stop and rest, you need to sleep more, you need to, your brain needs to rest, you need to make sure that you're, not sitting hunkering down and sweating too hard,
Yeah.
because you're gonna lose optimal, focus and optimal cognitive capability. And so we know that now, and that's been true. So yeah, it does tend to be a bit of a syndrome, and I've noticed some of the smartest and savviest people that you would ever meet, have gone through that syndrome where they get totally excited, at least early on, as they're implementing GTD, because
Yeah.
it does make a huge difference in terms of being able to just, by the end of the day, you've cranked a whole lot more than you thought you could.
Yeah.
And that could be quite enthusiasm, that could create quite a bit of enthusiasm for people to do that. At the
Yeah.
same time, a lot of people have discovered what it does. It just allows them to be a lot more present. They can actually watch their kids play football without being on their iPhone. For parents, that can be transformative, because they know they're feeling totally guilty about how much more quality time they ought to be spending with their kids instead of seeing them grow up out from under them, while they were on their phones.
Yeah.
So
The times have changed as well when you look at that from that perspective. Where you mentioned that, I think, in the book as well, where we were like, we had the whole age where everyone was working in like factories and stuff like that, and now you have an age where everybody's more creative in a sense and putting more effort into that. And then also you see that the kind of home and work balance is going out of hand in some cases, where people are taking their work home more than they were doing in that age where they were just factory workers, if you can call it like that. But
sure,
and I think that's one of the things that's changed a lot. Where I've had it myself, where when you're like, okay, I'm going home, but I'm still there's still some things that I don't feel good about that happened during this day, right? Where you were like, okay, I didn't finish that, or I didn't do that, and stuff like that.
sure. Well, the great Peter Drucker, identified the concept of knowledge work, which basically means you have to think to figure out what to do.
Exactly.
That, junk mail doesn't tell you it's junk mail.
Yeah.
You
that's the thing.
actually have to open the email and go, oh God, that's junk mail. Or sometimes you can see it from the subject line, but the in your physical mailbox, believe me, living in the Netherlands, you still get mail. Believe me,
For
I
sure.
do.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And so you still have to think. Thinking is hard. Thinking
Yeah.
requires the forebrain. It requires cognitive effort,
Yeah.
and you only have a certain amount of time of that you can do that. And so, yeah, so the knowledge work and thinking goes home with you.
Yeah.
Your mind goes home with you.
Yeah.
And all that stuff goes home with you. That's why if you're keeping stuff in your head, your head is just a really, really crappy office. And it has no sense of past or future in there. So cat food and business plan take up about the same amount of room. Either one of them will wake
Exactly.
you up at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can't do it.
You had the analogy with the RAM for a computer, and I think that's a great analogy for that as well.
Sure.
Yeah, where of course you'll fill it up eventually, but then something needs to go out, otherwise you can't work or function anymore.
Sure. Well, by the way, I mean, I could list, dozens and dozens of people who teach and whose expertise is Kanban and Agile and Scrum and Lean and, all that good stuff. And all those folks are, all the people I know are huge GTD champions. A good friend of mine who runs the Lean Institute out in California, he calls GTD as lean for the brain. See, all of those systems deal with your external workflow. What you were talking about in terms of Scrum and Sprint and so forth, it has to do with the workflow of building the product.
Exactly.
And making sure you have the right contents, as you said, brainstorm, make sure you're identifying all all the outcomes that you're trying to produce, for sure. But that's all external workflow. What
Yeah.
it doesn't do is deal with when everybody walks out of that sprint session, what are they going to do about what just happened?
Yeah.
How do they manage that? And what are their agreements about that?
Yeah.
So they're extremely good together. As a matter of fact, the guy who designed Sprint at Google was a big GTDer.
Hmm.
So there's a whole lot of similarity to what all of that's about. But it doesn't happen by itself.
Yeah.
Scrum doesn't happen by itself. That's why these models showed up, was because those things don't happen automatically. You actually have to put some cognitive and conscious focus on restructuring how you think about something and when.
Yeah. You need to put some effort into it to get it working in the
Yeah.
first place. Yeah.
Once you've got it, it is like a cognitive muscle.
Mm.
Deciding a next action on something when it shows up instead of when it blows up is actually training a cognitive muscle. Most
Yeah.
people avoid that question like the plague. They really do. Believe me,
Yeah,
I've
they
spent
do.
thousands of hours
Yeah.
going, desk side with some of the best and brightest. And a whole lot of those hours were spent having them grapple with what's the next action with stuff they got out of their head.
Yeah, and that's weird to me because usually I already like think in that manner. But what you would expect from someone that has that kind of function, or at least came to that point in their lives where they have that interesting position or whatever, you would expect them to know and identify. Okay, this is just the next thing that I need to do. It's weird to me that it doesn't come naturally to some people, but I can understand it. On the other hand, why you would get that if you're overwhelmed with all the things that you didn't write down or didn't capture in that sense.
Or if you happen to be the kind of person, and a lot of very successful people are very successful because they're very good at outcome thinking. They're
Exactly.
very good at visioning. They're very good at direction and strategy. And oftentimes their weak suit is the implementation and execution on that.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, most startups, at least the VCs that I've known over all the years would tell me, a startup, now you probably deal with people in the startup world, certainly
Sure.
a burgeoning here in the Netherlands. That there are three things a VC really looks for. First of all, do you have intellectual property, protection?
Mm.
Is it safe enough what you're doing? They need to make sure that's there. They need to make sure you have enough capital, enough money,
Mm.
to make it work. And then they need to make sure you can execute. And he
Yeah.
said 90% of the failures of startups is on the execution piece. They've
Yeah.
got the IP protected, they've got the capital, but they just don't make it happen.
Yeah, the founders are a key in that sense. Yeah, that
Indeed,
makes
yeah.
sense. What I was also wondering about, because there's one annoyance for productivity that I always have, and that's meetings,
Mhm.
and especially unproductive meetings, in that sense where there is no clear goal, and it happens a lot. It happens more than I think the whole productive meetings part. Um, what's your kind of view on that? Where for example, when I go into a meeting, usually what I try to do is actually get something actionable from that meeting, where we're saying, okay, these are the next things that we need to do, and not, okay, everybody said their kind of experience and that's it. But that's harder to do in most cases when it's a bigger group, for example, or whatever.
Well, the
So
first thing to do is to say, first of all, who owns the meeting?
yeah, exactly.
And then, if that's unclear, you better find out, whose meeting is it? And what is the desired, what would wild success be by what time?
Mm,
Not just what's wild success, by what time wild success.
yeah.
Believe me, a lot of people said, well, we want to have da 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 da, and they got a 30-minute meeting, but they need 3 hours to get there.
Yeah,
Good
exactly.
luck. That's going to create frustration. If you say, okay, by 2 o'clock, we want to make sure X, Y, and Z are true.
Yeah,
And if they're not true, we want to make sure we've got real clear next steps to make sure we get them true.
yeah. And
That
why are you
that's
having the meeting? That's
Oh yeah,
also
well,
a good
duh.
question.
Yeah, believe me, I mean, it is the universal complaint of most executives I've ever dealt with is meetings and email.
Yeah,
And crappy meeting get crappy emails. What did we just decide in meeting? We need to meet again to decide again. Oh my god! And then and a crappy email then creates crappy meetings, and because people are not outcome and action focused.
yeah, exactly.
And
So
outcome and action is
yeah,
the zeros and ones of productivity. What are we trying to produce, and how do we allocate or how do we reallocate our resources to make that thing happen?
Yeah.
And you can take that down to your kids in the vacation. You can take that to designing your software. You can decide. You can take that to meetings for sure,
Yeah. So
and just build it. That's a cognitive muscle to train. What are we
yeah.
trying to do? What's the next step? You know,
Yeah,
and
that would help tremendously with those kind of meetings. A lot of meetings go wasted because it doesn't have that kind of follow up on that.
sure.
And
Well, that's a behavior to train.
yeah,
You get invited to a meeting and say, "Hey, that could be pretty interesting. Could you tell me exactly what we're trying to accomplish?" And because I want to make sure, that I don't waste your time by my
yeah.
being there if I don't need to be there.
Yeah,
Things like
that
that,
also happens. Yeah, that also happens where you're pulled into a meeting and you're like, why am I in this meeting at all? I don't need to be here,
right?
because that ties in a little bit with my next point where I was what I wanted to ask about as well is there's been a lot of controversy about like open offices, right? Where everybody's like in an open office and
Hmm.
it's a killer for productivity and also for getting things done. What's your kind of opinion on that? Have you also seen it work? How do you view that?
Well, first of all, if you have a GTD culture that people really get this, open offices can work.
Mm,
The problem is people don't do this. When something pops into their head, they want to go interrupt somebody to get it done, as opposed to put it into the system, right?
mm.
My wife and I send each other emails when we're just sitting across the room from each other. Right?
Yeah,
People go, God, that's so cold. I go, what's cold is to go interrupt her. She's involved in something.
exactly.
And then I'm forcing her to come with some decision about something with me standing there, as opposed to let her think about it in her own timing. Oh my God,
Yeah,
how rude, would that be? And, the ideal, Steelcase in the US is a big, they're big champions of our stuff. And, I've been to their main offices, and, the ideal is a hybrid, where you've got open office space, you've got private office space, you've got, hangout cafeteria, chat space, you've got conference space. So you have all those different kinds of things. What's the best environment for you to do what kind of work in?
mm,
And obviously, a lot of the creative, graphics artists, whatever, like to be around other people doing that and be able to see their work and be able to wander around and have that kind of open feeling. Understood. And there are times that those people even need to go to a conference room, shut the door, and and do a weekly review, of their life.
yeah, exactly.
So it really kind of depends on what you're doing. But yet, to assume that open office is automatically going to increase productivity, big mistake.
Yeah, I mean, that's usually the thing that people are like, okay, it will improve like communication between teams, which it may or may not be the case, but people are automatically like, okay, but that's going to be really loud, and I want to focus on some things that I want to do,
Sure.
and
And sometimes you need a small group of 3 people in an intimate space to have
yeah,
it. And sometimes you need a big conference room because you got a lot of people that are listening in that ought to listen in to
yeah,
what's going on.
yeah,
So, it all comes back to what's the purpose of the meeting?
yeah,
What's the purpose of what you're doing? And given the purpose, what's the best context? What's the best venue? What's the best, situation and
yeah.
environment to be able to then produce that?
Yeah, it feeds into it feeds into stuff that I'm kind of I always have like the procrastination kind of problem where I'm like, okay, I really need to do these kind of things, but someone is talking about something that also interests me, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do that later, and then at the end of the day, you're like,
Sure.
okay, why why didn't I
Believe
do
me,
that?
very easy to get distracted.
Yeah,
And I just, I was reading somewhere else not too long ago that they've been some studies have shown that you think that getting people together to brainstorm produces better results faster,
hmm.
and sometimes it really does. But sometimes they've discovered it's better for people individually to go work on that problem and then come back together and share their results. That produces a much better result faster.
Yeah,
So interestingly, but the problem is when people go away by themselves, they don't have the discipline to sit down and think through the project. And that's why coming together in meetings sometimes works better than trying to have people do it individually, because the meeting forces people to think, that then they're not distracted by other stuff.
exactly.
So again, it's tricky.
Yeah, it's really tricky. It's really tricky, and then on top of that, you have like the things that the pings within your phone, right? Where someone is asking for your attention somewhere else, where you're like, oh, I didn't even want to deal with this right now, and I have to deal with it right now
Sure.
because it's urgent or whatever. And that's something that I've seen a lot of people do wrong as well, where they are like, okay, I'm getting this email from a client right now, and they are screaming that something is not working, and they don't take that step back and think about, okay, is this really urgent, right? Is this something that really needs my time right now?
Well, the problem, Amir, I mean, I'll be bold enough to tell you, the problem is that people are not managing themselves very well.
Exactly.
So people are living in emergency scan mode constantly because they don't trust that if they didn't handle it right then, that it's not going to get done.
Exactly.
So, once you have a trusted system, somebody walks in and say, David, could you handle? And you write it down a note and throw it in your in basket and go back to what you're doing. Or say, could you just write me a note about that? Please send me an email about that. That's a lot easier than me trying to keep that in my head.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so once you have your own trusted, capture, clarify, and organize and review process, then you don't have to let yourself be so distracted. But I understand why people do that, because they don't trust themselves.
Yeah, and the interesting part here is that sometimes I get asked to do something which is probably not a lot of work, right? It's maybe 10, 15 minutes worth of work, and I still ask them to create a service ticket in this case, where I just say, okay, just send an email with what you need to have done, just so I don't forget about that I need to actually do that, right? Where I need to pick that up, and that's tricky for me as well, because you're like, someone is like, okay, but really it's like 5 minutes worth of work, right? But then again, I have to explain to them like, okay, but I'm really doing something else now that I really need to finish today, and this is not something that needs to be done today. That's one of the first questions I always ask. Is it urgent enough that I need to do it right now? And that's the first question, actually. Or is it something that needs to be done today at all?
Yeah. Well, as I say, there are no interruptions. There are only mismanaged inputs.
Yeah, exactly.
So it sounds like you're doing a pretty good job of managing your inputs.
Yeah,
that way. But most people don't.
I've learned. I've learned. It's been a process.
Also, it's part of you have to ask yourself, is it your job to be doing that?
Yeah, also, for sure.
Why are they giving it to you? Are you the best person and the only person that can do that? Sometimes you are.
Yeah.
And if that's true, and you have given them tacitly permission to yank your chain about it, if it is an emergency and if it can be handled in 2 minutes, that's the best thing to do.
Yeah. I do that. I do that frequently as well, where I just say, okay, listen up. I've looked at what you want to do, and then I'm like, okay, but this can be done by him or her as well. I really don't need to do this. There is certain things that I'm pretty much sure I'm the only one that can do within the company at the moment.
Right.
But that's not something that that's something I need to be doing, of course. But the things that are really easy that you can do within the application, for example, yourself, why should I be involved at all, right?
Right.
And that's the thing.
Yeah.
So one other thing is we, for example, have remote people. So we have people that aren't here in our office with us. So do you feel like this change, because you mentioned globalization in the book as well? Do you feel like that's actually helping people to focus more on getting things done?
I don't know. It depends on what's the purpose of the company. It goes back to why.
Yeah, exactly.
Why are you doing that, and what's the nature of that? I mean, I think it's fabulous. If you know what you're doing, it's a great time to be alive. One of my partners is in Medellin, Colombia. Another one's in Denver. And then I have my wife, and somebody else is in Monterey, California. So, we're the five of us are pretty much the key people doing our work right now in terms of my company.
Yeah.
And that's fabulous. The toughest thing is just the time zone stuff, but that's okay. Make it work.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you just get a time that that works for all of you if you can.
Sure.
But yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the thing is that it ties into that open office thing as well, where people say I'm so easily distracted, and working from home helps me to focus. I do it sometimes as well, where I'm like, okay, I really need to work on this presentation, or I need to really start preparing for something that's pretty huge for myself.
Sure. Well, you need to make sure you hire for people who can work remotely.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
If
that's
they
also a thing.
if they can't manage themselves, good luck.
Yeah. That's also the reason why a lot of companies are like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna take remote people because I can't control them based on the distance or whatever. But then you're hiring the wrong people, I think, if you need to think like that at all. But what I wanted to ask, I have two more questions before we wrap up. So what do you, because it's been almost 20 years since the first book. What do you feel has changed more than just the connectivity part and stuff like that, where we're more and more connected with the world and stuff like that? But what do you feel is going to change in the coming few years? Is it going to be even harder to kind of get things done in that way? Do you feel that's going to change even more than it has over the last, I don't know, 20 years since you wrote the book?
What's going to change? I'm sorry, it goes back to connectivity.
Yeah.
It's like there's nothing new under the sun. I mean, everything I teach will be true 200 years from now. When we fly to Jupiter, you're still going to need an in-basket. You're still going to need to capture stuff that has your attention you can't finish in the moment. You're still going to decide next actions on it. You're still going to have to look at the whole gestalt of all the commitments and things you're trying to accomplish so that you trust what you do. That's universal. That's old as dirt, right? So there's nothing that's going to change about the methodology itself. What changes, as I mentioned, is how frequently things are new, how frequently you get surprised, how frequently you're going to have to redo and rethink and recalibrate what you do. Yeah. So that's going to keep going. That has increased exponentially probably in the last 10 or 15 years. And that's not going to stop. Yeah. I don't think. I think that's going to keep going. And I think, the good news is it forces people to then, probably earlier on than they ever did, have to really decide, what are they really doing? Where are they really going? As I say, if you know what you're doing, it's a great time to be alive. My God, I mean, the fact that you and I could chat like this, we could have this chat. You could be in Alaska, I could be in South Africa. It doesn't matter. Yeah. And so having a world that's connected in that way, man, how cool is that?
That's amazing, because as you said, I have some guests that are all across the globe, right, where they're in Australia or they're in America or whatever, and you can still talk to them like this and have a conversation, record it, and put it on the internet for other people to listen to as well.
Well, all that's increasing is the stress of opportunity.
Yeah.
In a way, if you have a big crisis or a big trauma, in a way, it kind of simplifies your life. And in a way, it kind of makes you more relaxed because it takes away all your options. Mm-hmm. You don't have to, you don't have to think, you don't have to decide, you just have to survive. Yeah. It becomes quite obvious, but it's kind of like when you're not in a crisis, you're in a bigger one. If you're not in a crisis, all the demons at the gate come rushing through. Oh, I could do this. I could do this. Oh my God, I just saw that. Oh my God. Oh, we could. Oh, how cool would that be? Oh, yeah. And then you overwhelm yourself. Yeah. Most of the clients that I work with, are some of the most productive people in the world. Strange, the paradox that the people most attracted to GTD, probably you'd be one of those too, are the people who need it the least. Right? You're already organized. You're already focused. You went, oh my God. But see, you just raised the bar for yourself. Yeah. And your own creativity and your own productivity, and your own, drive, essentially, and aspirations actually just threw you kind of out of your own comfort zone, and you just needed to pull up the rear guard and use GTD to do that.
Yeah, and the thing is that that's from a personal standpoint, it's always the case. Like if I read a book and I get 1% better by just reading that book, that's accomplishment for me, if I can call it like that. It helps. It just helps with the kind of small things that you can tweak to get better at things. It's the same way with public speaking, for example, which was something that I was not really good at, to be honest. Maybe I was really bad at it, actually. And through just looking at stuff, reading about it, finding kind of a mode that works for me to do actual presentations. That all helped, right? It's just all those small things that get you that 1% better. It's just those small increments. But that's also something that I think a lot of people think like, okay, but this is just going to help with this kind of small part within my life. Yeah, why not, right?
Sure.
That already helps.
I have a saying: small things done consistently in strategic places create major impact.
Exactly, and it is like that, and it's really like that. So I have one more question. And that's the question I always ask at the end. So what are you, when you look back, what are you kind of most proud of since you started this journey with GTD?
Ooh.
It's a hard one. It's the hardest one.
It's a hard one, yeah. There are two things, I guess, and they're kind of tied together. And one is discovering something that, without fail, improved people's lives if they implemented not just even the whole thing, any part of it. As I say, this is not like running with scissors. It's anything you do about anything we've talked about here that anybody listening to this applies or implements is going to help give them more clarity, more focus, lift them up to some level of gain in some way, shape, or form. And to find something that does that universally and that people aren't doing that, and that I could find something that I was able to share that did nothing but improve people's lives, anybody all over the world. So writing the book and being able to put this methodology into some sort of scalable format and some sort of thing, as opposed to just me talking about it or sharing it or showing it with somebody, that was a big, big, big milestone for me, was to be able to then do it well enough that people could just truly pick up the book and change their lives. And I've had, legions of testimonials about that. And I suppose the second thing was, once I did that and it was translated into 30 languages, the world kept knocking on our door, called hey, can we do this? How can we keep distributing this? How can I be a GTD coach or trainer, or can I have this as my business? And so in the last 10 years, we're now represented in 70 countries, with certified trainers that we've certified, master trainers that are training even in their own languages that we really trust, to spread this methodology. So it's a world movement, essentially. And so I guess the two things that finding out, first of all, uncovering the methodology, finding out ways to scale it, both for an individual, they could get it without me having to be there. And then also to be able to scale this to a much broader population of people around the world. I guess those are the kind of the same things, but I'd kind of wrap all that together and say that's what I'm most proud of.
Yeah, that's the big impact that you made, and I think that's something to really be proud of. I would like to thank you a lot for the opportunity to speak to you. It's been very interesting to hear kind of the backstory behind it, and also what you created in these 2 decades, and even the time before that. Thanks a lot.
You're quite welcome. This was fun. A nice interview. Yeah.
No problem. How can people find you on the internet?
Gettingthingsdone.com. Pretty easy.
That's the best way. Okay. Thanks a lot again, David. And for the listeners, you can find the Bits vs. Bytes podcast on bitsvsbytes.com, and also on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. It's all Bits vs. Bytes. And I have a newsletter where you can find 5 things every 2 weeks that revolve around business, technology, and leadership. And you can find that on bitsvsbytes.com/newsletter. And I would like to thank you for listening, and until next time.